So Drukhari are one of the top armies in the meta right now, and their list generally consists of multiple units of Talos or Grotesques. And I can tell you at times, guys, these things seem almost unkillable. This video is all about how you beat Talos, how you beat Grotesques. Now, I've brought on one of the top Drukhari players in the UK. He's just won the Last Chance Open. We're going to be breaking down how his list works. We're going to be taking a deep dive into exactly how Talos work, how Grotesques work, how some of the other key units in his armies function. And we're going to be talking about some of the tricks, some of the things you've got to watch out for in the armies. And of course, how you play around these big units of Talos or Grotesques and how you kill them. Now, it should be absolutely awesome. Now guys, if you're new to the channel, D6 Evolution is all about 40k tactics, and the aim is to try and make you a better 40k player. So if you like the sound of that, subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with the latest releases. And of course with the video, guys, let us know what you think. If you found a cool way to play around these units or kill them, let us know. And I'm always looking for ideas for videos, so if you want me to do another one of these about an army that you're having trouble beating, again, put it in the comments. So welcome guys, it's Andy here from D6 Evolution, and I'm along with Eric. Say hi buddy.
How's it going?
So Eric is one of the top Drukhari players at the moment, so I brought him along mainly to tell you how you can beat his list, because I think that's always very interesting. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about some of the tournaments you've been to recently, buddy, what lists you've been running. We're going to take a really deep dive into some of the key units in the Drukhari Codex, mainly Talos, Grotesques, and some of the more unusual things. Talk about some of the key relics you need to know about, some of the stratagems which may catch you off guard, and then of course we're going to be talking about how you beat these guys. Does that sound okay to you?
Sounds great.
Awesome. So, I guess the first thing to say is you've been to a couple of tournaments recently, haven't you?
I have.
Yeah, and you've come up pretty well, haven't you?
Just a wee bit.
Yeah, go on, tell me about them. Stop acting so modest.
So the last two tournaments that I went to was first one back in 1st and 2nd December was the AOS Wales GT, held at Firestorm Dames down in Cardiff. So what you'll find for this one and the Last Chance Open that I went to, I took the exact same list. So the list, just, spoiler alert to go over. Started off with a Prophets of Flesh battalion, including Urian Rakarth, the Warlord, a Homunculus with the Backseater Mask. It's too good not to. 3 units of Rax's troops, just 5 men, keep them because they're really efficient for their points. 8 Talos, units of 3, 3, and 2. And trust me, I wanted that 9th Talos, but at a certain point, in order to make things work, it was just the only way to do it. So then the next portion of it is a Blackheart Air Wing. This is 3 Razor Wing jet fighters, which are basically the evolution of what I used to run Ravengers at it, but the list has really taken off when I've added the jet fighters because of all the additional things that they can do over a Ravager, which we'll get to. Yeah,
we'll talk about that later because that's really important, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. And then the final part of it is a Harlequin Vanguard. So they're Dreaming Shadows, which I'm going over this because as many people are familiar with Harlequins and all the shenanigans they can do. So they're Dreaming Shadows, and that allows them to basically do the Space Marine banner of when they die, regardless of where they're on the battlefield. On a 4-up, they can either shoot if it's the shooting phase, or fight if it's the fight phase doing a single attack. In that Vanguard, I had a Shadow Seer, I had 3 Death Chesters, and I had a unit of 5 Harlequin jet bikes with Haywire. So the concept of the list basically was one where I play board position really well, in that I can, both in terms of, one of the events was an ETC format, one was ITC format. But basically, I can control the middle with my blob that just kind of moves up. It has a bit of shooting, against vehicles. It's quite nice, even though some of that can get reduced, especially with knights and the stratagems that they can use. I've got a lot of durability, and I've just got a lot of shenanigans to kill characters. So I have 3 different ways to snipe characters in there. The bluntest one is the Death Chesters, putting out, somewhere between 9 and I can get up to 15 shuriken shots a turn, plus some psychic powers to snipe with that. The The second is with planes, and this is a big difference with the Ravengers, and able to make them the closest.
Yes, because they've got so much reach, haven't they? You can just put them where they need to be.
Yeah. And then the third way is with the Harlequin jet bikes, because when you can double move them and with the advance of 44 inches, that gets you really far. And so you can either shoot, kill something, and fire and fade away, or you can just go and charge things. And sometimes the best way to use them, which never gets their point back but has a strategic effect on the battlefield, is say your opponent has a unit of Hive Guard in the middle of their army that you really don't want shooting twice. Just go send the Harlequin jet bikes over there. They'll eat the smites. They'll get charged by things.
Yeah.
But it's one of those where Talos by themselves really suffer from the fact that they move 8 inches and then can go 12 inches and, for up to that in assault. And that's kind of it. So the Harlequins and the planes give me a lot of ways of playing less linearly than the Talos, and sometimes when I run Grotesques also go into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the Talos actually don't shoot very well, do they?
Well,
the BS4
so the
up.
-1 AP, the strength 4 -1 AP, it's just enough shooting to allow me to not have to come into someone.
Yeah.
And this is why I vote Talos over Grotesques, because Grotesques, they don't have any standoff ability.
Yes.
But which makes them really easy to play around outside of when they deep strike. And once they deep strike in, you can just stay away from them. It's like, congratulations.
Yeah.
And they're points efficient, but they're still very expensive for what they do. Convenience. I first played against a Nurgle army, and I've played with Nurgle a fair bit back before the rule of 3 destroyed my what I call the lawnmower list of 8 Plague Burst crawlers and a unit of 9 plague drones and some plague bears.
Yep.
So I know what that army does, and basically, as long as you stay in your Talos ball, pretty much anything that's trying to assault you that doesn't hit you with multiple units, you can just lock that down and then get to swing 1 or multiple of your own units against them and really mitigate the stuff that they can do. Yeah. So basically, it ended up being that because they didn't have a lot of units that would fly, I shot down the units that could fly, used flyers to screen, funneled his 1 big unit of drones to come in at me, and then fought last. And then that kind of was that. So against Nurgle, the flyers really played in for movement blocking, and then I was kind of pick off and choose what I want. Mm-hmm. And a big part of Talos is the chain flails. So this basically brings them from having 5 attacks to 10 attacks, and they get to reroll the wound. So when each Talos unit is throwing 30 attacks into a unit of Plague Bearers, even if they have the -1 to hit, the
attacks are going to stack up, aren't they?
Yeah.
So before we move on and talk more about it, I think it's quite important. You mentioned the fight last there, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Tell me about that, because that's a really important part of your list, isn't it?
Yes. So that is the Backseater Mask. It's on the Homunculus. It's one of the best relics in the game, if not the best relic in the game. So there's 2 parts to it. The first part is when the bearer charges, it cannot be overwatched by any unit. And I bring this up because Tau, I don't care about supporting fire. The wording of it is he cannot be overwatched, period.
Yeah.
So that some armies pay for that part as their relic, and it's their best relic. Then the other part of it is at the beginning of the fight phase, you choose an enemy unit within 6 inches. That unit cannot fight until all other units have done so. So the wording of it is key because it makes them ineligible to be chosen for, say, the counterattack stratagem. So you cannot interrupt with that after one of my unit swings, if in the case that I have charged.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing is if the opponent has the unit that always fights first, a great example of this is either Slanesh Demons or Custo Jet Bikes when they've used Swoop and Dive, then they fight as if they don't have that ability. Okay. So that would basically put them into the middle step after the Chargers, but before the folks who are fighting last.
Interesting. Now, after we played in our game in the Glasshammer, I actually figured out a way around this, which was quite interesting. In fact, there's 2 ways around it. I've done a little video on the channel about it.
Well, so the first one and the most important one is, depending on how you hit, really you just have to, if anyone has their Talos ball, and I use the term Talos ball because that's the only appropriate
It is,
way to
isn't
run
it?
it.
Yeah.
Because if any part of their Talos is more than 5 inches away from the front of the homunculus, you just hit to that one portion, and then you use your pile-in move in order to get to it. Another way you can do it is declare charge on multiple units and hit one unit that is just out of 6, and then use your
Use your pile-in to get
6.1, and then use your pile-in to get in.
Backseater Mask is amazing, guys, and you just got to know that if you're charging Talos, you're probably just not even going to get to swing.
Or, I think increasingly it's really important in this game to have abilities to snipe characters.
Yes.
And there are many, many ways to do it. It's not just sniper rifles, though sniper rifles are good. A lot of different armies have some sort of sniper rifles. Pay very, very close attention to the wording of your psychic powers. Shards of light, for instance, you just choose an enemy unit within 18 inches. So, you know what, I think it's going to be better for this to, instead of going through all 10 of my games, to just pull different anecdotes in this from each.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Pull one in the 4th round at the last chance open. I played against a good buddy of mine, Cole McCartney. So he had Grotesques, Urian, the Backseater Mask guy, and twice as many planes as I did. So you look into it, it's like, okay, I have a slight advantage because Talos are better than Grots. And especially in close combat where Talos are wounding on 3s with a reroll and Grotesques are wounding on 5s.
Yeah.
And the only way they get a reroll is with the stratagem. So in that game, I basically knew that if I can kill the Backseater Mask, and especially where he had it placed, that was only one of the characters that was providing a T6 bubble for 2 of the units. So I used the Shards of Light psychic power, which did 3 mortal wounds to him, just getting at the edge of 18. And then my Death Jesters were able to finish him off, which then lowered the toughness from T6 to T5, which really matters because with my planes, one of their main hard-hitting weapons is the Disintegrator, which all of you guys probably know from the hard way.
They've been around a little bit, haven't they?
Right, but I mean, that difference between woundings on
it's massive.
5s with 4s, yeah. So I was able, between that and getting some lucky charges off, I deleted 12 Grotesques out of his 21 in the first turn. And managed to wrap 2 of them as well. And that's just one of those where, you first of all in this game, to play at a very high level, you have to have both the ability to take out key support characters, and the mind of thought of exactly how to hide them, because sometimes that can really just be the difference in the game.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, so we've been talking a little bit about Talos and Grotesques when you've been talking about them. Which one do you think's better?
Talos by far. So part of this is...
Should we quickly break down what people who don't play them very often, what a Talos is and why it's so good?
Okay. So Talos, it's better to start with the defense before we get to the offense. Because in this case, they are monsters. They have a toughness of 6, which if they're within 6 inches of a Homunculus Covenant character, goes up to T7. They have 7 wounds. They have a 3+ armor save. And they have a base 5+ invulnerable save.
Yes,
however,
which no one takes.
You'll ever see them will be in Prophets of Flesh, which gives them +1 to their invul save. So
absolutely.
They have a invulnerable save. They also, because they are... It's impossible to talk about Talos without talking about the Power from Pain ability as well. So with this, turn 1, and these are all cumulative effects. Turn 1, they have a 6+ Feel No Pain, for everyone who hasn't played previous editions, a 6+ to ignore damage that has gone through after a failed save.
Yeah.
Starting turn 2, reroll advances and charges, which is huge. Turn 3, they just get +1 to hit in the fight phase, so they're hitting on 2s.
Yeah, they'll never use that right.
Turn 4, they're fearless.
Yeah.
And turn 5, this is the one I always forget about, but it's some of the best. They're a 6-inch bubble of -1 leadership. Now, the key to this one to remember is it's not cumulative with multiple Drukhari units.
Yeah.
And with the Power from Pain, unless they're from a Blackheart battalion, it doesn't affect the vehicles. Which is key, especially for understanding that -1 leadership one. if you're in the Blackheart battalion, the vehicles will get a 6+ feel no pain, but they won't get the other abilities.
Okay, so there's some really... So essentially you've got what is effectively an 8 wound monster then, isn't it, when you factor in the feel no pain, with a 4+ invuln, which can fly. You've got a stratagem so you can fall back and still charge, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, there's another a couple other key stratagems there, and we haven't even gotten to the offense. We're talking on the defense right now. So there's one stratagem for them that allows them to heal D3 wounds. There's another one for 2 CP to allow them to reroll wounds in the fight phase, which is big against things like knights or custom bikers. And then
he's teasing me because he killed all my bikes in the game we played.
Hey, no, I did not, because your warlord hid on like the 4th floor of a building and was the one custom not to die.
That's how he became the captain in the first place.
Well, no, he became the captain in the first place by not being able to kill 5 racks in close combat. Which also happened. And the racks, I think they lost 1 guy and they did 3 wounds back to the custom captain.
Yeah, he had enough of that game.
And then he realized he could just shoot them with bolters and they would all die. But so getting back to it. So offensive-wise, it's important to know that. So there are 2 different weapons loadouts that you'll see in terms of the shooting weapons that the Talos will have. The one that up until now has been quite popular has been having 2 Haywire blasters. So it basically gives them 2d3 shots at 24-inch range, strength 4, -1 damage, but it has the Haywire effect against vehicles. So on a 4 or 5, it does mortal wound in addition to other damage. On a 6, it's D3 mortal wounds. So this one, it's honestly a really good all-rounder. It's obviously great against vehicles, but it's also the right level to just kill your random guardsmen and and
it's -1 AP, isn't it?
Which is the sweet spot in a lot of places.
Yeah.
And now, one thing to know with them, they are ballistic skill 4+. So it's that point where negative modifiers start to really hurt them. And while Haywire weapons are assault weapons, still you advance in that and you fire something near -1, all of a sudden you're hitting on 6s and it's almost irrelevant to shoot. Except for the one time that I think 5 Talos firing at long range at a Alatok Hemlock that was untouched killed it in one go of shooting.
You gotta love when those dice spike.
It was just 6s after 6s. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so the other thing you use with them is you can use Fire and Fade, can't you, to get them a bit?
So now Fade is a little bit of a misnomer because you rarely see these guys fire and move, farther away from you. They will almost use that as a quick way to get up the board. Now, one of the things with that can get dangerous, though, is you're getting too far from your support characters, or you're creating gaps in your Talos ball that I've been mentioning, in which case that can oftentimes be a misplay.
Yeah.
Talos are honestly a patient man's army.
So that's what I was saying. It's like you capitalize on your opponent's mistakes when they're positioning them. You just got to really just see, like you're saying, if they left you a little gap to get in somewhere.
Exactly. I mean, and that's the power of having units that can move a fair bit farther than your normal 6-inch move to be able to capitalize on those mistakes. So like, as a change of pace, I literally picked up a Tyranid army to learn how to play differently.
Yeah.
And I love the Tyranids because they have some of the best stratagems in the game. They have fantastic movement abilities between Swarmlord, Opportunistic Advance, the one that allows them to move again and just cause more wounds to yourself, which Formagons don't care.
Yeah.
They'll take that in it. But it's definitely important to understand what kind of different movements and interactions there are in the game to basically, even if you have no intention of playing that army as your tournament army, just to understand the different mechanics and how to defend against them.
Yeah.
So I found like playing that army made me much, much better at defending against the shenanigans, because then you can really fun it down and figure out, how do you counteract that?
Yeah.
So what I found is oftentimes, with the exception of my jet bikes, which are pretty much a turn 1 harassment unit, my play has gone more conservative over time. It's gone much more mission focused because for the vast majority of the last year, there haven't been too many armies out there that would just pick me off the board.
Yeah. You're going to win on mission or you're going to table them, aren't you?
Right. And this is one of the things why I like, I rarely table people, to be completely honest. It's because I'm more of a close combat army than a shooting army. If someone really wants to prevent them from getting tabled, if they killed my fires, they can avoid it.
Yeah.
It's just, it kind of is what it is.
Yeah, I guess you just dominate the middle of the board, don't you? You've got the objectives, and they can't do anything about it.
Exactly. And that's where abusing the character rule becomes so good when you combine that with planes and with Talos. Because say I just have a random Death Jester that's just like hanging out in a corner, and I have flyers on the board, I'm never getting tabled. So I played Tau 3 times, which is a terrible matchup for this army. I've won all 3 times. Once was basically a Pyrrhic victory where I had 3 Death Jesters and 2 planes left.
Yeah.
The Riptides were struggling to kill the planes, and they couldn't shoot the Death Jesters. So I won 20-0 on mission, despite having that left.
Because they're only going to get close to tabling you turn 5, turn 6, aren't they? And by that point, it's too late.
Exactly.
And I think it gets even better now that with the new chapter approved missions, tabling doesn't even count. So,
oh yeah. Exactly.
So by the time they even do it, you've won. So, so that's really cool. So I think getting back to the Talos, just quickly, one last point. So what's the optimum close combat loadout? Because you can arm them with a few different things, can't you? You've got scalpels, you've got other things even nastier, I think.
No, I mean, yeah. So chain flail and macro scalpel is the way to go.
Yeah.
So the macro scalpel, and I'm going to count the Urian benefit numbers in here. So just full disclosure on Urian, he has a 6-inch bubble, +1 strength, +1 toughness, and +1 leadership.
Yeah.
So with those benefits, the Talos will have, with the macro scalpel, 5 attacks at strength 8, -2 damage, which is basically used for anti-knight, anti-primaris marines. It's arguable if you use that or the chain flails against spears, but that's generally how you do some of the heavier stuff.
Yeah.
And for your horde clearance, you have the chain flails. The chain flails, they double your number of attacks. Each Talos is getting 10 attacks. They are strength 7, no AP, 1 damage. They get a native reroll to wound. And so you pick up a lot of enemy mobs, especially hordes, just left and right.
Okay. Right, so I think that they're absolutely crazy, Talos are. So I think let's quickly go over the other unit you're probably going to see, which you don't run because you don't like, which are Grotesques, aren't they?
Yes.
Which I believe are just more efficient in terms of number of wounds, aren't they?
They are slightly more, but it depends against certain targets. So I believe Talos end up slightly more efficient against things like Death Watch because of the difference in the 4+ and 3+ save.
Yes.
If you're getting hit on your invulnerable save, the Grotesques are a little bit more efficient.
But they're toughness 6 rather than toughness 7, aren't they? When you factor in the benefits,
Exactly.
But what I've found, particularly when I've played them, is they're easier to work around because they've got no shooting. So effectively, you can move block them if they don't, because most people don't actually take much shooting in their army. So what I did was just put walls of guardsmen just over an inch away from them, and they just can go an inch a turn because they can't even clear the screen and then charge something else if the rest of the army's got no shooting left. So and you can stay away from them, and then when you need to move block them, you can properly move block them. So I found, whereas Talos, there's just wrecking ball of death which can just fly over your screens. They can just
Right. I mean, so we're talking about how to beat fly-out Talos because this tactic is also relevant to that. So the only difference in this case between the Talos and the Grotesques is because you can block the Talos just as fine. You just have to have your guardsmen basically be like, I think it ends up just over 5 inches away as opposed to 1 inch away.
Yeah, because you put the back of their base so that they can't fit their base in with the maximum movement, can't you? Plus an inch.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's not quite as good, but you can move block pretty well,
also,
can't you?
And also remember, so a lot of people had big outcries in the September FAQ that Talos didn't have a points nerf. However, the fly nerf was much more significant than a points nerf would have been. because in terms of how it affects the assault phase. Because that unit, say you just string it between two pieces of runes, which I can't go through.
Yeah.
I have to assault those guys. I can't, you could have an incredibly juicy target that's like 2 inches behind. Can't do it.
Yeah.
It's just so. I mean, it definitely changes how you have to play Talos. And I get on this. I've actually had more success with the Talos post the FAQ, but I think that's been far much more due to just experience with the army than it has been necessarily the power level, because the power level of Talos definitely gone down over the past 6 months through that nerf, through some of the other armies that have really benefited from chapter approved in particular. I think we're starting to get to a point in a greater meta that we're going more shooting heavy rather than close combat heavy, which we'll get into a little bit later of how to beat Talos, but it's definitely the Talos are coming down a little bit from their peak.
Yeah,
it's part of they're also everyone knows what they do.
Yes, and now people are bringing Deathwatch specifically because they can kill Talos.
So we got into a little bit about the Backseater Mask, but in terms of what you'll see at the homunculus, how it'll be used, generally it'll be positioned behind the Grotesques or behind Talos, based off of where a homunculus is, or particularly where you're in Rakreth is. If someone is deep striking a unit of Grotesques, either they're going to try and take advantage of an opening that you left them way off in a corner, or they're probably going to drop somewhere in near Urian in particular.
Yeah.
Because, especially for the time when the strength 5 versus strength 6 matters.
Yeah.
So, talking about the homunculus, it is a character with 5 wounds. It'll have a 4+ invulnerable save, no armor save to speak of. Much like the Talos and the Grotesques, it'll have the 6+ to ignore damage that goes through. So consider it to have about 6 wounds.
Yeah.
In terms of close combat, there are a couple of different variants depending on how many points you can afford. The best weapon that you're going to see with them is the electrocorrosive whip. So it always wounds on 4+. It's -2 and 2 damage. However, if people are just trying to skimp on points, the other one that you'll probably see is the Venom Blade, which I run due to points. And it's a close combat weapon that's poison 2+, no AP, just 1 damage.
Yeah. So,
just 2 points.
I assume these guys are primarily just a buffing character, though, are they? Is this what you're using them for? So you shouldn't really be getting them in combat that often.
Right.
Yeah. So you've got homunculus for +1 toughness, and then you've got the boss man, haven't you? Urian Rakreth. So is he pretty much the same but just tougher?
Yes. So he's actually toughness 6, which catches a lot of people off guard because he's like a fairly small infantry model. But yeah, so in addition to the +1 toughness, as he mentioned, he also has the bubble of +1 strength and +1 leadership. And then his key is he halves all damage done to him, much like Abaddon does.
Yes.
So it makes him very deceptively difficult to kill. Also, when you look at his warlord trait, which has a built-in, he can reroll 1 to hit, to wound, saving throw, or damage roll a game. So that, but that one's only for himself.
Yep.
So it's built-in CP, so he can be very difficult to kill. He's terrible in close combat, but he does have a little trick that he gets to do 1 attack in every fight phase, and if he rolls a 6 to wound, it does D3 more wounds and additional damage. Also, he has a cheeky little bubble that at the beginning of the fight phase, and I always forget this one, you roll a D6 for every enemy unit within 3 inches. On a 6, it does a mortal wound.
Yes.
So
it could be important one of those games, you never know.
You never know which one it's going to be, and it's not in the psychic phase, which means custodes do not get their special save against it.
No.
Yes, I'm going to throw every one of the anti-custodes things against you. Just so you learn something. You never know.
I did learn a lot in our game. We had one turn of custodians doing a glorious charge into the Talos, and then the rest of the game running away.
Yeah, it was probably salt in the wound when I vected the reroll for the charge distance.
All my charges failed. It was horrendous. But let's face it, that probably made they lasted another turn, actually.
I don't know. I mean, because that's one of those kind of decisive times when custode bikers get charged. That's just really tough for them because they lose the reroll and they're not going first.
Yeah, you're wounding on 5s as opposed to with a 5s with a reroll. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm to fives with the rerolls, almost like wounding on a threes. It's just the math is slightly off.
Yes, it is. Okay, so we've covered the essentially the death ball of Talos or Grotesque with the buff characters, which you're going to see, and I don't think that really changes much between lists, does it? So the next thing is the fire support. So we're seeing a lot of Ravagers with disintegrator cannons, but particularly Wes on the channel here has been talking a lot about Razorwing fighters being better, and you've alluded to it as well. So what's your thoughts on it?
So, I mean, especially if you're not going Cabal heavy, and I think the Coven's battalion is infinitely better than the Cabal battalion. We've talked about the headquarters, which are great, versus the Archons, with the exception of giving the bubbles reroll 1 to hit, and if you've got the Relic, reroll 1s to wound. The Cavalry Warriors just are not great troops. They're cheap. They're effective in that, but
okay,
we'll talk about racks in a minute and why racks are just so much better.
Let's talk about the Ravagers. That's what it was. Ravagers and Razorwings.
Well, there's a point that I'm getting to with this is, first of all, you start the minimum spearhead to take Ravagers includes the Archon and is 447 points.
Yep.
Taking the Razorwings for 3 of those is 405 points.
Okay.
So you start off with 42 point saving. And that's one way to start. Now, just looking at the differences between Ravager and Razorwing. So the Ravager has 1 more disintegrator. It has 3 versus the Razorwings have 2. The Razorwings, what they get in return, they get the 3 different types of missiles. So the 3 types is a D6, strength 6, no AP, 2 damage missile, a 3d3 shots, strength, just poison 2+, and 1 damage, no AP missiles, which is fantastic against Orcs, Horde, all that. That's my favorite one.
Yeah.
Or kind of your catch-all, which is D6 shots, strength 7, -1, 1 damage, as a native reroll to wound. So it gets that, and then on top of that, just for fun, which almost always does nothing, is a twin splinter rifle underslung. So it's rapid fire 2, poison 4+. It adds additional shots. But so the Razorwing also has, being a flyer, has the -1 to hit.
Yeah.
And with the 72-inch range, it means that your first turn, it will be able to get into range. Whereas the Ravagers run into the issue of they only have 36-inch range. A 14-inch movement's very nice, don't get me wrong, but a savvy opponent can make it so you're easily outranged with that.
Yeah.
Also, they're a bit more vulnerable to getting alpha struck because they have to set up a bit closer, whereas the Razorwings are usually deployed in the opposite corner from your opponent's army. And in order to have a similar effect for Ravager to get anywhere, like the Razorwing does, you have to deep strike them, which can't come in turn 1. Now, flyers, and I don't know if you guys have done a video on this more broadly, but there's so many tricks you can do with the flyers that you can, for blocking movement lanes is fantastic for that.
Those poor Imperial Knight Gallants, they just...
No, they go nowhere. So my wife has an army of Admech, and my favorite thing to do with them, which I hear insane, she has a unit of 6 of the Dragoons. They, if those hit the Talos unit and get to go first, they pick up the Talos unit. But then I just put the 3 flyers around there, just not moving anywhere. And I set it up right that I can do it for 2 full turns. And then that's just like a problem that I just don't have to deal with for a while.
Yeah. Flyer movement blocking is amazing. It just and it goes back to the fact that so many things can't assault flyers that it's just really, really good. And I think if I was building a Drukhari, I think I agree with you. I think the planes are much better than the Ravagers in that respect. You've got 3 less things which can hold an objective, but realistically, if you're relying on 3 Ravagers to hold objectives, you're probably not building your list right anyway, are you?
And that was one of my real worries when I did switch over. But again, what you'll find with my list is mine is not the most firepower heavy list or the hardest list. It's kind of just evolved into, I have a lot of different ways to hold objectives, particularly using the character rules to do so. I have a lot of different ways to get at things. It's a toolbox, not necessarily just a hammer like Talos.
You still do have 8 Talos, to be fair.
I do, but again, so here's the other rule about Talos. You always have to assume that you have 3 less Talos at the start of your first turn than you start with. Because most good armies can pull off 3 Talos in a turn.
Okay.
I've consistently found this. Knights can do it. I mean, sorry. It depends on the knights, but you have to have going with the assumption.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I'm teasing
right. So a knight army can definitely do it.
Yeah.
Tau, if they go first, they're closer to 4 or 5 Talos, so they can pull off. Death Watch, whenever they land, will easily do it. And the list kind of goes on from there. And so you have to, part of it is building an internal resilience that you have to understand in your planning of, okay, I can afford to take this much and I still can accomplish whatever my goal is in going for it. It's not an army that you can plan. Well, my plan is to ignore the objectives and table people because, again, you move 8 inches. You know, there are certain things that just come with time in terms of understanding, you know, exactly how the flow of the game goes with them, because they are slow, but you have to put your opponent into decisions where they have to come to allow your Talos what to do, or that by playing the avoidance game, they're losing something else. It's not just hey, if you take your movement phase with your assault weapons and you just move 5 inches to the right, then I'm never going to catch you and you've lost nothing. So, I mean, it's all about imposing real or perceived costs on your opponent. So
let's talk about the other unit, which is deceptively tough and which is good for holding objectives. So we're talking about Racks next. So I had this amazing thing against you where I rode at my Dawn Eagle jet bike. My shield captain was there. He thought he'd, do a few little shots against you. Killed nothing. Assaulted them. Killed nothing.
Right.
Racks are deceptively tough, I've found, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. So a couple things to know about Racks. First of all, they have a move of 7, which is deceptively fast for them. They're going to be re-rolling their advances starting on turn 2, which is really nice for prime objectives. They have a toughness of 4 of base, which if they're near the Coven characters becomes toughness 5.
Yeah.
And they have the 4+ invulnerable save with the 6+ of ignore wounds, unsaved wounds done to them. So it takes some dedicated firepower to remove them. So usually I find that, 3 Imperial Guard mortar units probably can just about kill one.
Yeah.
Which is why I use the Razor Wings to kill those units first, because they're disintegrators are optimally designed to killing mortar units. And I mean the other thing about them is it makes them a great additional unit to kind of come in the back of the Talos ball and be available to run off and score objectives, and also to keep your character wrapping fine if they have fires or other things that could potentially, because they, it's not just like, oh, I'll throw a AP -2, 10 of those shots over there and then they're dead.
Yeah.
No. A lot of people will underestimate that. So there's one stratagem that's unique to them with Prophets of Flesh that I want to bring up in this case, because it catches a lot of people off guard and it's a fantastic stratagem. So it's 2 CP, it's called Black Cornucopia, and it's basically tied to traders, but for Racks. So you can pull a unit off the board, or a Racks unit, they come back at full strength more than 9 inches away from your opponent.
So that's really cool, because it's from any board edge, isn't it? That's the... So I think anything in the game where you get to redeploy, particularly mid-game, is really strong, particularly if you force an opponent to one side of the board and then you just bring it on somewhere else. And because they take that dedicated firepower to kill them.
So I've used this twice, both of this past ETC, to great effect. At that point, I had a unit of 9 Racks. So the first time I used it was playing against Shooty Carnifex spam.
Yeah.
And I did this in the first turn, which is pretty much, it's the only thing Drukhari Codex that can redeploy on the first turn, even at that point in time. Brought them in behind them and managed to make a 9-inch charge, wrap 1 Carnifex, and tag 3 other Carnifexes. Which was obnoxious. Granted, some dice happened. The plan didn't end up working as well as intended, but that is to show us that The other time I used that was playing against a Wave Serpent spam army, and I basically brought them in right behind his lines. And now the big thing about running 8 Wave Serpents is you can easily kill a unit of Talos if you blow all their Serpent shields, and then have one guy blow a Serpent shield again for good measure, because that's causing on average 18 mortal wounds. But it's the closest visible enemy unit. So I had those little racks there against mortal wounds before he could get to the Talos.
These poor racks.
They're there to die. You know what? It fits the fluff very well.
Yeah.
Which I do care about slightly.
Yeah.
So they're just a fantastic unit for that. They don't have any gun shooting. They're somewhat decent in close combat because they have poison 4+ weapons. They are 2 attacks base, 3 on the sergeant, the Achilles or something like that. And by starting on turn 3, they do hit on 2s in close combat. So I mean, they can beat up other racks. But usually, I mean, they're there to just be a fairly durable deck chair unit.
That's really cool. Now, one other unit I want to ask you about because I've seen it around. What's a Kronos, and is it any good?
So, a Kronos is basically a Talos stat line, except you inverse the weapon skill and ballistic skill. So it's weapon skill 4+, ballistic skill 3+.
Yeah.
It has several different interesting abilities. First, ultimately kidding. It has a flamer that is strength 3 -2, 1 damage, except on a wound roll of 6, it's D3 damage. And it has a 18-inch shot that's also D6 shots, strength 3 -2, 1 damage on 6 is D3 damage. Like Talos, they can be taken in units of up to 3. They're very durable. The shooting is very variable. I understand it a lot more when you're running a Farseer.
Yeah.
Because then you can get the reroll to wounds to potentially get a fair bit more of the D3 damage hits. But compared to the Talos, their output, they're decent for clearing hordes, but they're not. I haven't ran them myself, but just like from the on paper, they don't impress me as much.
So
particularly
so I was gonna say, are people literally just running them because they can't take any more Talos past 9? Is that
usually.
where you see? So you've got 9 Talos plus some Kronos. Is that how it's working?
Generally, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
At that point, you're not getting tabled. Like, but by the time you add the Kronos plus 9 Talos, it gets fairly difficult because either you're no longer running a battalion of Prophets of Flesh, or you're running a spearhead and a battalion. And when we've been talking about the Homunculus being a support character, getting a second Homunculus doesn't really add a lot because they're not great in close combat. They don't have any range attacks. It's just not as efficient there. And so trying to add the 4th heavy support just isn't that great. And so that's where whenever I'm thinking, I've got almost enough points for a couple of them. Because they've got a couple other fun abilities like a reroll 1s. I think it's to wound, but you have already the chain flails. And if with their 3 close combat attacks, they do cause wound, they can heal wound on a Talos. Like, they're cute, but in a book full of some very points efficient things, such as the Razor Wings, the Ravengers, the Talos, the Void Ravens, they don't feel like they get it quite as much.
Okay. And just quickly, let's touch on the Void Raven, but let's keep it quick on this one.
So, only thing you need to know about the Void Raven, I mean, it's got some guns, they're cute.
Yeah.
So the Void Mine. So this is after Void Raven has flown over a unit. You roll a d6 for every model in the unit, up to 10 dice. Now, if it's a unit of vehicles, then you roll 3 dice for every vehicle. So, like, if you're flying over Dragoons, if you're flying over...
Okay, that's really cool.
Their vehicles, Knights, all that, so on a 3+, it does more wound.
Do you know what's really annoying is as a Dark Angels player, that's 1 better than my Dark Talons do.
Yep. And what's really annoying if you're a Death Watch player? That's usually most of your units. So, yeah, that's why we played Glasshammer. I had one of those. It didn't do a lot in our game, but there were times where it's just like, hey, I see your shining spears.
Yes. and as an opponent to that, it's coming.
And it's just like, what can I really do to avoid this? Now, there are ways to avoid it, and it's namely to make it that the unit can't land when flying over it.
Yeah.
But by the time you're trying to position that, unless you have a lot of like guardsman chaff units or something like that, it's really hard to do for multiple turns.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's quickly go through. Is there any other key relics you think we should know about apart from Backseater Mask?
So,
is there anything else you?
Bit of Living Muse, which gives the reroll 1s to wound. If you're running, say, 6 planes and 3 Ravengers that are all in a nice little ball together, like we're playing beginning of 8th edition.
Yeah.
Then that can do it. But other than that, so there are one that's really nice for the Witch Cult, which I know we're not talking about witches here. It's the Red Glaive. It's basically for a succubus. It's +3 strength, -2 or 3, and it's D3 damage. So it turns what is normally a character to tie things up into something that actually kills some things and affect vehicles.
Okay. So talking about, let's move on. So talking about stratagems. We talked about the reroll wounds. We talked about falling back and charging. You've got your deep strike strat if you're running grotesques. -1 to hit strat, but that's not for homunculus covens. And the big one I want to talk to you about is, do you think Vect's worth it still?
Yes, absolutely. So Agents of Vect, it's now 4 points. You probably all know what it does. So there are some key times that you need it. The first one is Fire and Fade on Dark Reapers.
Yep.
To just catch them out of the open and just remove them, because if you leave Dark Reapers unmustered all game, they'll kill all the Talos, especially with Jinx and Doom.
Yeah.
Some other big ones are Full Tilt on Knights. Though, even with a reroll, you can fail those. As the last game of Last Chance Open, I did fail. They made the game much more difficult.
But it's the fact your opponent knows it's coming, so sometimes they don't bother to do something because they may not even advance the knight because they don't think it's going to happen.
I'd say it's almost always worth it to pull out the Agents of Vect, which pulls out the command.
I mean, I think there's a certain tactic work against it to try and tease your opponent to use it on something they don't need to.
Yep. Oftentimes, ironically, the CP reroll is the best time to Vect things. Whether it's that key charge that was just failed, as in the case of our game of Glasshammer.
Yep.
A reroll save on the last wound on a knight, for instance.
Yep.
Say they fail the Soulburst Psychic Test, or for you brain Psychic Power. Those are the times when it's like, when you can prevent like an entire unit from doing a key thing, it's absolutely worth the command points.
Yeah.
It also just depends on what kind of theory you apply for how you use command points. If you're someone who's going to be really stingy on them all game, or if you're someone who's like, I'm going to use all my command points in the first turn to get the maximum benefit possible. I played it both ways, and it's interesting to see which ways it goes. So I want to touch on just some lesser known stratagems as well.
Yep.
So one of my favorites is if a unit fails a morale check within 6 inches of a Coven unit, for 1 CP, you can force them to lose an additional model. So Guardsman doesn't necessarily matter so much unless it's that one guy that would get a kill point. A Dragoon fails a morale check and you can pull off an entire Dragoon for 1 CP. Oh yeah. Kill an extra broadside.
Yeah, you would take that, definitely.
Times when it can come out. And so that one's incredibly powerful. There are a couple that are leadership debuffs that are really nice. And then a fun Witch Cult one, which I occasionally make some of my Razor Wings Witch Cult, because this is really funny, is and this is whichever one that Lilith is, Cult of Strife. If you kill in shooting phase, if you kill a unit in shooting, for 3 CP you can shoot again. In fight phase, if you kill a unit in the fight phase, for 3 CP you can fight again. So that can get really annoying really fast.
Yeah, I bet it can.
Doing double taps are a lot of fun for that. But that's in a situation where you have enough CP to use it, which is rare. Those are a lot of the major ones. The one thing about Talos is the Talos units themselves aren't really reliant on command points.
No.
I usually find that I'll occasionally do a reroll of, sometimes I will reroll a save, but the only save I'll really reroll is if I get shot by the Castellan's Volcano Lance. Or like the Harpoon. Yeah. I always save a CP for the Harpoon. Because it's just like, I can't be asked to just get a Talos Beard and D3 Mortal Wounds.
Yeah.
But it's often just healing Talos, and even then I'm, on average it's only 2 wounds. It's often better to get a guy from like 4 wounds to 6 wounds than it is from like 1 to 3.
Okay.
And sometimes that's a psychological thing as much as anything for the opponent. The opponent feel like, I did a lot of shooting, I got it down. It's just like, no. But I often find that my Harlequins take up most of my CP.
Okay, go on. Quickly tell me about your Harlequins, then we're going to get on how to beat your army. Because that's
okay. Yeah. So my Harlequins are mostly just annoying. So the Shadow Seer, being a Psyker gives me 1 deny, which is really nice to have. Psychic powers for her. Smite, which Mortal Wounds is always nice. Shards of Light, which is D3 Mortal Wounds and a -1 leadership within 18 inches. Doesn't have to be the closest. And then Twilight Pathways, which is my good old move against stratagem.
Yeah.
She also, the Host Grenade Launcher is hilarious when combined with the Shards of Light. Basically, if I hit, it does, and I roll 2d6. If I equal or exceed your leadership, it's D3 Mortal Wounds. So you had another source for Mortal Wounds. So she, in theory, can actually do up to 18 Mortal Wounds in a turn if all you do is roll 6s.
Yeah. The one thing I was going to ask you about in terms of allies with all this haywire you're bringing in your list is, when we played, you brought a Farseer.
Yep.
Is it worth it for Doom for your list?
Really depends who you're playing against.
Yeah.
The Doom is nice with haywire, but I find haywire can be so spiky anyways that the extra 25% you get for it, assuming you get Doom off, is, it's not the moving, that in and of itself does not make the list.
Okay, that's fair enough. Because you have to actually drop another detachment to take him, don't you?
Yes. And also because I often play with ETC in mind, playing with a Doom and Jinx kind of crutch is kind of negative for practice for me.
Yes, because you've got your because one of your other teammates will take the Eldar Codex, won't they?
Right, because you don't want to effectively take out an entire faction from being able to be used just for that.
Yeah.
When Harlequins can give you some similar benefits in terms of you have Psyker, it brings you the Mortal Wounds, but that's one that's probably less likely to be used as a full detachment. Because basically with my army, I get kind of the optimal amount of buffing between stratagems and psych powers that you can do with the 1 unit of jet bikes. After you get diminishing returns for taking multiple of the same.
Yeah. The one thing I did see at the last game I played, I think it was against Tom Higginbottom. He used the one to move again to give the second unit of jet bikes a 3+ invuln.
Yep.
He moved him in the psychic phase and then did the stratagem again, which I thought was brilliant.
It is. When I played after I played you with at Glasshammer, I played against Josh Roberts doing the same thing. I'm like, oh, okay. But the problem with Harlequins by themselves is a lot of it works really well when you have they can be the anvil, they can be the hammer, but you need an anvil to hit them on.
Yeah.
So like my 3 Death Jesters. A Death Jester by itself is okay, but in a Harlequin's army, you're worried about it just getting shot because just of the fluidity of how they play and 24-inch range. When I can park a bunch of Talos in front of it and keep them completely surrounded and safe, and I have 3 of them, just over time they'll kill characters. Like at my second game in playing at Allies of Convenience GT, I think I killed 5 characters with Death Jesters over the course of the game, just guard characters, and just be like, well, this turn I'm going to kill him. And mathematically it does. Next turn, I'm just going to go this company commander, I'm going to kill this commissar, I'm going to kill this company commander.
That's really cool.
It has that ability to just kind of chip away over time.
Yeah, because you're getting it for 5 or 6 turns, they actually do a lot of damage over that, as opposed to shooting for 1 or 2 turns. Right.
And oh, by the way, they have 4 attacks apiece. So like they're no slouches in close combat, especially when you think of them as not just one Death Jester, but my Death Jesters usually go and hang out together. So like all of a sudden, it's 12 attacks that hit on 2s, and it's like, you're not charging other Talos with it. But if there are guardsmen around, they can go and help tilt a little combat. Your funnel guardsmen on Talos or guardsmen on rack close combat. And then kind of the final unit is the jet bikes. So the jet bikes, they've got Haywire. Haywire is great. That's not why they're in the army. They're in the army because this army otherwise is very slow.
Yeah.
It's my ability to... They're my scalpel. If there's a unit that needs to get tied up, things like Castellan robots, all sorts of things, because they also have the Harlequins have a fight against stratagem. So my best example of this is my 3rd game at Last Chance Open. I was playing against 9 broadsides, 12 shield drones, all the characters on an open board, with one little rune exception. I won that game because my Harlequin jet bikes moved 8 times in the top of turn 1.
What?
So they have a Phantasm equivalent for redeploy. That's 1.
Yep.
Move.
Yep.
Double move.
Yep. That's with the psychic power, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
Charge from behind the one wall in his own deployment zone, so to reduce the broadside supporting fire.
Yep.
Hit a unit of drones for that. Or sorry, one of his screening units. He had been a little bit sloppy on like the sides of how he'd done it. So the charge is 4. Fight, consolidate.
Yep.
3 CP, fight, consolidate, end up within 6 inches of the Shadow Sun, who'd be calling Cayune, and just made it within an inch of one of the broadside units.
Yeah.
And so because of that, it takes away the ability to Cayune, or at least there imposes greater cost in Cayuning. And it takes out 3 broadsides worth of shooting out of the game. And so that's one of the real issues with Dark Eldar, Drukhari, is that it's a very linear army normally.
Yeah,
and
so
it's very easy to play around. And so Harlequins add a lot in terms of playing multiple layers of the game. Drukhari play by the rules.
Yeah.
Harlequins just don't. And so that's why they're a fantastic splash into the Drukhari army. They complement each other very, very well.
Okay, so that's really cool. I kind of want to play Drukhari now that you've been talking about them. Last week I wanted to play Deathwatch. This week it's all I want to. It's really cool because you're clearly very passionate about your list.
Saying the opposite to me.
Yeah. All right. Now we've talked about how good your list is. Let's talk about how to beat it, because that's the fun part, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
So, go on, lead off.
All right. The best way to beat it is to shoot it and just keep shooting it.
This is some top-level advice here. Thanks.
Well, so at ETC, I played against 3 Castellans.
Yep.
Playing Vanguard deployment. I went second. And with a little bit of good rolling on his part, when it came to my turn 2, I had a Ravager on a single wound left.
Wow.
My Grotesques were in the sky. He had killed 9 Talos. He had killed 2 Ravagers.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, especially in Vanguard deployment, he can deploy far enough away from me that, say, even if I had gone first and I got 2 moves on him, he still had plenty of movements away from me. And there's not a lot I can do. Because again, Talos are slow.
Yeah.
They're somewhat limited range. Their ballistic skill isn't great. Their weapons are very spiky. They're most efficient in close combat at turn 3 and beyond.
Yeah.
So, alternatively, if you've got a good close combat army, rush them and tag them. So a great way to tag Talos is if you have a fight against stratagem at the end of the fight phase, because technically, if you use that, you're beyond the stage at which the Talos could fight back.
Because it's at the end of the phase.
Right. It's not during the phase. Much like you can't, say you bring in a Rhino at the end of the phase with an outflank stratagem, you can't then get the guys outside. Because it's at the end of the phase, it's not during the phase. So,
is that how it's played in the ETC, is it?
That, I believe so. Tom Adriani updates the facts so frequently.
Yeah.
That at least was how it was played at ETC this past year.
Okay, fair enough.
So, but, I mean, either way, you're at the end of the phase.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, understanding how end of the phase mechanics work is incredibly powerful. I'm going to take a slight tangent on this. So, House Tyrannus, they have their get back up at the end of the phase ability. However, say I am a Thousand Suns player, I have a psychic power that allows me to cast an additional psychic power at the end of the phase. So Tyrannus dies in the psychic phase, gets back up. You then use an additional smite and kill him again, and he can't use the stratagem again.
And because it's your turn, you determine which things happen in what order.
Right.
Because you determine the sequencing if it's your turn, if things happen at the same time. It's a bit like Gilliman getting back up. You could then go and fight him again, couldn't you? Because he gets up at the end of a phase, doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's those sort of things that really catch players off guard.
Timing is so much in this game. And so also knowing what stratagems are during the phase as opposed to at the start of the phase. So something like command and control known for Tau, I believe, start of the phase. The stratagem for the Tau marker lights, choose someone within line of sight, everyone within 6 get a marker light.
Yeah.
Start of the phase. So depending on how strict of a game you're playing, if someone, you've already started their shooting phase and then they go to use the stratagem, they are technically out of line. And so you can tell them. So these are, knowing the timing can be very important in that regard, especially if you're playing in a tournament style.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's not just that, because the game states changed at that point, so they're actually getting quite an advantage from playing it in that way.
Oh, absolutely.
Because there's a huge difference between start of the phase and mid phase.
I completely agree there.
Particularly,
So bottom line, everyone, read your stratagems, read your opponent's stratagems, know when they're supposed to go off, and just play by them.
Yeah, because I think once dice are rolled, then it's totally changed.
So I agree with you, but it also depends on how you establish with your opponent at the beginning of the game what kind of game you want to play.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a different talk. That's a really good talk.
I'd be happy to do it with you because my perspective on this has become much more lax over the past several years, because I used to be very much on the line of let's play 100%.
Yeah.
Game stage changed the moment anything's gone on. But I've previously started to view the game as a social experience, in addition to a competitive one.
Okay. But I mean, I think
that's what matters.
Yeah. I think that's definitely worth another talk, because it's one we're planning on doing, because there's such different opinions on it. Yeah, that's going to be a really interesting one, but we won't dive into it at the moment, I don't think, because it's quite contentious.
Tangents, I promise you.
Yeah. Okay, so what in your list at the moment? What would be the optimum target priority against? Would you kill the bikes first to limit your mobility, and then deal with the Talos later because they're a lot slower? I mean, I know a lot of it depends on what matchup you're against, but
generally speaking, just kill the Talos. Because if you get into the end game and I have several Talos available, you're done.
Yeah.
And that's just for playing objectives, Maelstrom, all of the above. What I often find is people will shoot my Razor Wings and shoot my bikes because they're in their face, but without really thinking about how they'll impact the game in the longer term. So unless you have a case where you really need the Razor Wings dead because there's a certain stratagem that'll change the game that you need to be either out of CP or not be able to Vex with. Because if my Razor Wings are dead, I can't use Vex anymore. Then no, just shoot the Talos. There's too many games that I've had where I end up winning because they go on shooting adventures, and I specifically play in a way that I want them to do exactly that. Now it's a lot easier to say I'm going to shoot and kill the Talos.
Yeah, let's go on to this. How do you kill a Talos? Is there any tricks? Is there anything you've...
Right. So there's not a lot of tricks in so much as like pulling out certain stratagems that you would for some other armies of like getting the lightning reflexes to rotate ion shields out. With them, I would recommend just kill entire units. Like don't split your fire up. Just like make sure unit's dead, and then move on to the next one. Because what you can do with that is say, depending on how a Talos player deploys a place, you can be like, okay, I'm going to move and block this one. I'm going to just shoot dead this one, and then they might have just one to play with, and that one might not be enough.
Yeah.
The thing about Talos, they're very big. They're probably going to struggle to hide. Be prepared that prepared positions is very good on Talos because you can put them up to a 2+ cover save.
Yeah.
Well, a 2+ cover save in a time that, because of their size, it's very difficult for them to get that otherwise. But yeah, I mean, doing that. So, any time that you can just get horrendous amounts of fire into one on one side.
Yeah.
Like, particularly in a case where you can get behind the Talos. Because the Talos, in order for them to do what they want to do, really need to march to, be like, okay, by turn 5, I need to be across the board to this location. And any time that you can make them have to double back, basically, it buys you 2 or 3 turns of Talos in your face.
So if you've got flyers or something, jump over the lines and just shoot them from behind.
Like if you had a Death Watch unit that was going to come down and shoot them, I would drop them behind the Talos as opposed to in front of the Talos, because in front of the Talos becomes a speed bump for the other Talos.
Yeah, you're slingshotting them, aren't you?
Right. It's make the Talos player make hard decisions.
Absolutely. And if you're a Deathwatch player, if you bring a little teleporter home or afterwards, you can bugger off back to your own deployment zone when they get too close.
Yeah, you say that, but any Drukhari player worth its nuts is just going to fly a flyer over and make you pick up the teleport home. So, I mean, I had a game at Eggs, which you were at, where top of turn 1 I got first blood by flying 2 flyers over, making pull up all 4 of his Gene Stealer nodes, infestation nodes, because they work the same as teleport homers, and so once all 4 of them gone, they can never come in from reserves. Another reason why Razor Wings are better. Yeah,
I think I'm sold on Razor Wings. But I think that's right. If you've got a big assault unit, dropping behind it is the way forwards, because otherwise they'll get in that 2d6 charge. They're just getting loads of extra movement. Because I assume the thing you want with Talos is just to keep shooting at them for as long as possible and just keep them out of assault range, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. Don't give them speed bumps.
Yeah.
I mean, oftentimes it's a lot easier to do on end of game scoring than it is on Maelstrom scoring, because that's where Talos are very, very strong. Even if they're not killing things that much, say they're sitting in the middle and all the objectives are 12 inches away, and it's just like, basically come at me, bro. That's where having cheap throwaway objective secure troops can be really good to have against Talos. You can say I'm sitting in the middle of an objective, but there's one spot within 3 inches that is more than an inch away from the Talos. Just run a guardsman unit to go touch that, score the objective from me, because chances are I probably don't have a rack unit that's hanging out just behind the ball. You could, and some people play with more troops than I do, but, just abuse it that way can get you the points as needed just to stay in the game as you're whittling things down. But generally, I mean, just work around the edges. Marcus Henson who plays Knights and some other stuff with it, has definitely learned this and is on the cusp of he owes me a major beating at he's mastered this well, and I just keep getting lucky against him. But of just work around the edges, and eventually you can commit. But what if you do commit at Talos? Pick off on the isolate and pick off one area. Don't just go into the Talos ball unless you can destroy the Talos ball.
So, because you run effectively 3 units, so you're saying wait until they split their units up, they're kind of half dead, and then just pick 1 unit.
Right. Yeah.
And then run away again.
If you can, charge 2 units into a Talos unit, preferably a weakened one, and just kill it dead that way. And if you can do that and get a guardsman screen on the other side of them, all the better. Yeah,
absolutely. And then you've just got 1 unit maybe at the far end of the table who's not going to be able to assault you anyway.
Right.
So it's a fun sort of cat and mouse game, really, isn't it? Playing against Talos.
Yeah, it is. And it's just there's a lot of little things that both players can do for it. But the list when you only have mono Drukhari, the list can be very predictable, and so it allows you very much more to get your target priority down. When you start to sprinkle some of the other Eldar stuff is where the list, you have to do a bit more thinking, because the list might not hit nearly as hard, but it's going to have tricks.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to try and anticipate how that's going to play out. Now, I think the change to the chapter proof missions will help that a fair bit. Say, I know 5 out of 6 chance I'm going second. Well, I'm not deploying anywhere near the line. I'm going to be back in my corner, and I'm going to have stuff on the edges over here and one back here, and you can go at one of them, but not at the other. And also just in terms of where things are ultimately going to end up because of drops and all that. But yeah, I mean, they're definitely a force that at least at this point has to be reckoned with. Deathwatch will probably put them on a shelf a little bit, and then they might come back out as soon as Deathwatch, find their place in the game.
Yeah, and just quickly for the guys who haven't watched my other fairly awesome video about Deathwatch, where we had a chat with Stephen Box, who's one of the top Deathwatch players at the moment. Tell us why Deathwatch are so good against Talos.
So with optimal buffs, you deep strike in with, we'll just take 1 kill team for instance.
Yeah.
If we hit on 3s, a Watchmaster will probably be deep strike in or somewhere nearby. So they're re-rolling all fail to hits. You will have chosen as your mission tactics at the beginning of the game to be heavy support, because when we call Talos. So you're using Hellfire rounds to wound on 2s, re-roll 1s. So then a Talos player is basically having to make somewhere in the line of 38 saves on their 3-0. And because it'll be 2 or beyond, the chance of them having cover is pretty low.
Yeah.
So 38 saves, they pass 2/3 of them, but that still means you're failing 13. After the Feel No Pain, you're losing almost 2 Talos out of that. So that's 1 unit taking no stratagems. So if you drop 2 units in, you're killing a Talos unit. You're generally going to have 3 of those plus a Smash Captain who are dropping in. So, it's easy enough to show how that damage can go.
Yeah.
And when the Talos move into you, you then play the Drukhari stratagem for 2 CP, which allows you to shoot again at them at -1 to hit.
Yeah. You kind of feel like the guy who wrote the Deathwatch book just really didn't like his friend's Talos.
Exactly. I mean, it is what it is. It fits the Deathwatch fluff. The other annoying thing is just the Storm Shields being 2 points for them.
Yeah. It just means that when...
Sorry?
Yeah, it just means when you hit into them, you're bouncing off 3+, aren't you?
Well, if you're doing it right, you've got to go through some 2+ before you get to the 3+.
Yeah.
Which makes it a little bit difficult for a Talos player, because it's like, well, do I do the -2 damage because that would go after the Terminators, or do I do the, the Chain Flails, which will, would go after the Vanguard veterans, or not the Vanguards, the Storm Shield guys.
Yeah.
But what ends up happening is, unless you can draw out the Storm Shields early, either the Storm Shields or the Terminators early, you end up with all the wrong things going the wrong places. That -2 damage goes on 1 wound 3 plus invul save guys.
Yeah.
Saves.
Yeah.
So it's kind of catch-22. It's a real issue for the Talos.
Yeah.
Because they just, there's no intercept stratagems in the Drukhari book or the Harlequin book. I mean, I guess if you magically had Dark Reapers in a Talos army, which I've never seen done, you could use their whatever. It's like foreboding.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of great ways to do that or to block that outside of just classic screening.
Okay. Any other armies which you think have got a pretty hard counter to Talos?
Knights can.
Is that just because they just shoot them in the face?
Yeah, exactly. Tau can.
Again, same reason, yeah.
Yep.
Elder, I guess, debuff you and then shoot you in the face.
Yeah, but for most of your Drukhari players, I'd say yes. I've figured out how to beat that army, but it's very careful positioning and play.
Okay.
But again, that's for most people, yes. The Shining Spears are not that great against Talos. Basically, you need the Reapers to shoot down most of the unit, and the Spears come in, do their shooting up close, and then Soul Burst move away.
Yeah.
They can't really assault the Talos. They can try and deal with the planes, but there's ways to prevent that.
I think any time that you're assaulting a Talos is probably the wrong answer, isn't it? You know, for a toughness 3 space or toughness 4 space elf.
Yeah, unless never assault anything you can't kill before it shoots back. It's kind of a general good rule.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just in terms of other things in the meta, there are some armies out there you just can make a horrendously shooty version. I mean, there are several codexes that can do that.
Yeah.
And that can be tough. I mean, if you took 18 Hive Guard and 3 Exocrines and just sat 36 inches away from me, hopefully I get there in time. But that's where things like Harley bikes can help mitigate it somewhat.
I think just talking about the Grotesques for a minute, because that's the other build you see, that there's particular things in the game, I think, which can work really well against them. There's a lot of things which reduce their movement, which don't work against Talos. So you've got Tanglefoot Grenades, you've got Thunderfire Cannons, you've got the new shiny Vigilus Formation, which works on... Are Grotesque infantry, are they?
They are, yeah.
Yeah, so it works on them, whether you shoot a wyvern at them, and they half their movement as well.
That's really fun.
So you've got all these things that actually, if you're playing against Grotesque, you can really just take a unit or even a couple of units, depending on what armies you play. You can just take 2 units out of the game straight away in terms of they just can't move forwards. Which I think, all these things specifically say they don't work on fly, unfortunately.
So the one thing I will say in Grotesque's favor is in the ITC they get much better. And that's because of the enclosed ruin special rule and just kind of the proliferation of ruins.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Those magic buildings which are appearing in the LVO and so forth.
Yeah,
it's so dumb.
Ended it in the way that they ended up. That's all I can say on that one.
Yeah.
I definitely use it to my advantage at the events that I've gone to. You just put characters in buildings, and
you're going to do anything you can, really, aren't you?
Right. You play with what's given, but it's probably bad for the game ultimately.
So I think that's pretty much everything we've got to cover, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Well, listen, thanks a lot for coming on the show and talking and telling us how to beat your list. Hopefully, we're both going to the Welsh Open, aren't we, in a few days? Mm-hmm. So hopefully I've learned something, maybe get a little bit closer to beating you this time.
Hey, I look forward to it. Last time we had absolute blast. So
No, it was good fun. It was good fun.
Yeah. It'll save me from all the other Death Watch and Mike Porter's 9 or 10 Eldar flyer list.
Oh, is he the one who's taking that? I saw that on the...
Right, yeah. Anyways.
Anyway, thanks a lot for it. And, right, guys, we'll see you in the next video, okay? Take care.